Welcome to another episode of Fast to Heal Stories. I am very excited to have my guest, Macy Schuchart, here today. And Macy is from Austin, and she's going to talk to us all about berberine. And we were talking before we started recording. I haven't devoted an entire episode to this, and it's really kind of crazy. I've been in the nutrition and dietetics industry for 22 years, almost 23 years. And berberine was never on my radar until the last year or so, and working with people with blood sugar dysregulation. So it's really crazy that most people have no idea what it is, what the benefits are from berberine, how to take it, where to find it, all of that good stuff. So very excited to have you here. Welcome, Macy, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I've been taking berberine for the last couple of weeks just because I thought, you know what, I recommend this to pretty much all my clients that I work with, because when they're working with me, they typically have some sort of blood sugar dysregulation or weight issue or diabetes or what have you. All of the things that berberine can be beneficial for. So why don't you give us a quick backstory, how you even found berberine to be helpful, what your passion is with it, and where you're at right now.
Yeah, definitely. So I did my master's in herbalism. I spent some time in Hawaii, and when I was there, I was working with like some native indigenous people, and it made me realize how much power are in like these herbs out there. So I got really into all of that. As you know, like diabetes is a huge like epidemic right now. I think it's like 1 in 3 people now are expected to have pre-diabetes or diabetes. And it also has really impacted my family as well. So my grandparents had it, my like siblings, uncles, like all types of people in my family are pre-diabetic. So it's really interesting to kind of like learn about like the pharmaceuticals that they're taking and just like the process that they're going through. There's a lot of like confusion, and there's a lot of being told different things, all of that type of stuff. So I just started kind of getting more into healing diabetes with herbs, and I came across this compound called berberine, and it's from the barberry. So I kind of like started learning more about that, and I was like, wow, like this is a really powerful compound, especially when combined with some other herbs that can like really reduce people's insulin levels, their blood sugars, lower cholesterol, also all sorts of things. So after kind of learning about that herb, I was like, doing more research, seeing stuff online. And there are companies that sell the product, but it's not as like widespread as you would think, like just for its actual benefits. And so I kind of like did some more digging, and a lot of companies like don't want people to know about berberine. I guess a lot of that is going on, and I think a lot of this is because of like the pharmaceuticals. It's like a big industry, a big business, all of that type of stuff. So I just got really into that, and just from my clients that have used it, like the testimonials are crazy. Like people are getting off of metformin, people are reducing their insulin dosages, all that type of stuff. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, and you alluded to the pharmaceutical industry probably not wanting people to know about it. Like that was my next question. Like, why don't people know about it? I'm a healthcare practitioner. Like I said, I've been in the industry for 20 some years, and berberine's only been on my radar for a year or two, and I've just started promoting it to clients. But you hit the nail on the head, is the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want people to know about the benefits, especially when we're talking about metformin being the first line of pharmaceutical use, typically when somebody is either pre-diabetic or has type 2 diabetes, fatty liver even, PCOS, a lot of times the polycystic ovarian syndrome. That diagnosis will get you a prescription for metformin. Metformin was, used to be known as glucophage, if people have heard of that pharmaceutical. But yeah, metformin and berberine, there are a ton of studies where they have been studied head to head. And berberine has just as many effects, if not more positive benefits than metformin, because you don't get the side effects from the berberine that you would get from the metformin. So it's been studied against metformin multiple times, and we just don't know about it because berberine isn't expensive. It can be found pretty, you can search it up and find a source of it. It's a lot cheaper than a pharmaceutical, and there's not as many side effects. So it is crazy that people don't know about it and don't know about the benefits. And of course, I just want to put this disclaimer out there. If you're a listener who is on metformin or some sort of diabetic or some sort of pharmaceutical for blood sugar regulation, please don't just stop it and start berberine. Like, you need to have a conversation with your healthcare provider and make sure that it's safe for you to start. But yes, I totally agree with you. People just don't know about it, and the benefits are very hidden. But from my research and from that I have learned about from other health care practitioners, holistic integrative in the integrative space like I am, berberine dates back over 4,000 years. Like, it's not something that people just started using in the last 100 years. I mean, this goes back to pre-biblical times, and there's literature that it's been used for thousands of years. So have you seen that in your research as well?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think with like because it's from East Asia and different parts of the continent, but with any herbs like that, they've been used in other countries like way before America has heard about it. And it's crazy because they're used for the same things, like blood sugar regulation, cholesterol, all of these things. But back then it wasn't as like, it wasn't like it's used for diabetes, but it was used for technically, sorry, it's my dog. Right, I'm letting my dog.
I know my dogs are in the basement, and because I'm like, I always think they'll just stay sleeping, but then it's like, no.
I know, it's like literally sees like one person and he's just going crazy. But yeah, as I was saying, it's interesting because, we call it like pre-diabetes, diabetes, but back then they're just feeling like a fluctuation in hormones internally, or they feel like the fatigue or lethargy. And so they are supplementing with herbs. They're not even like calling it a certain like disease or condition. They're just naturally doing it. And I think that's what's beautiful about herbs in general, is just how people can feel that connection like internally and like physically with the herb, and just how connected we are to nature in general.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So can you elaborate on more of the benefits of taking berberine? We know that it does help to lower blood sugar, but what are some of the other benefits, and how is how is it actually working in the body to give us these benefits?
Yeah, so berberine has so many benefits. It's actually crazy. I got really into it with the blood sugar regulation, and then as I was selling the product, because it's our most popular product, I just started realizing that there's people out there taking it for like everything. So I'm still like learning all of its benefits, but it's really cool to see that it's kind of like a powerhouse herb, like a team player. Like, it can just do everything in the body. And so obviously like the biggest benefit is that it lowers insulin levels and balances blood sugar. But it's also really good for lowering bad cholesterol levels. So a lot of people that take it have like taken it consistently for like a month or two. They'll go and do their labs, and their cholesterol, the bad LDL, is actually lowered. Um, it also helps with weight management. So part of this is because it acts on the metabolism. Um, and basically it also can help reduce sugar cravings and just cravings in general after meals. So it can help promote that feeling of fullness. And this is why a lot of people like to take it before lunch and before dinner, or, before they're eating like a heavy carbohydrate meal. Um, it just reduces the like feeling that you need to get more food, or you're like craving other like sugary sweets. Um, and it also normalizes blood pressure. So my dad actually takes it for his blood pressure, but that's another benefit. I guess like blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar are kind of all related, but it does balance all of those at the same time. Um, it's also really good for heart health. So it strengthens the heartbeat, and it is really good for like inflammation, immunity. Um, and then another thing, like you were mentioning, like the PCOS, and different like hormone balancing, like people with like thyroid issues, with like fatigue or like low energy levels, it can help with all of that as well. And then also for gut health. So that's one I just kind of learned about. Um, a lot of people with like SIBO, I think it's SIBO, SIBO, um, or IBS are prescribed berberine because it actually goes in and clears out all of the bad bacteria in the gut. So it's kind of like a natural like antibiotic. Um, and it does this without killing the good bacteria, which is really cool. So
Yeah, and I know I saw that with when I started taking berberine, like the digestive benefits. I mean, I like to think I have a pretty healthy gut, but I was like, oh wow, I like this. This is really, I think, cleaning some things out. And as far as I know, with side effects from berberine, some people do complain of some GI upset, but and I don't know if that is the cause of it. And I'm not suggesting that, berberine is going to, clear everybody's gut out completely, but you have to kind of put two and two together that those who are experiencing some GI upset, it might just be because that berberine is clearing out some toxins or bacteria that are more harmful. And, that can be a side effect. So I always tell people, like, if you see that side effect from berberine when you start to take it, don't do the full dosage right away. Just, if you're going to take 2 or 3 capsules a day as a full dose, start with one, go low and slow, and then, do that for a couple of days or a week until your gut kind of adjusts to it. And then you can try adding more in. But there are a few people who just don't tolerate it. It's a very few, it's a very low percentage, but some people that just don't tolerate berberine well. Are there any other side effects that negative side effects that you can think of? I mean, we know that there are massive benefits to taking berberine with the blood sugar dysregulation, the metabolic positive implications with the weight loss and the blood pressure, the LDL lowering, as you mentioned. Are there any negative side effects other than some GI distress? That's the only one that I know of. Or are there any others that people should watch for that I'm missing?
yeah, so you pretty much hit like it on the nail with the GI upset. That's definitely a more common one. I think just because it is similar to metformin in the way it acts in the body, a lot of people also get that with metformin.
Mhm.
So that can be common. For people who do have sensitive stomachs, it helps to take it with like meals. So a lot of people will take it with like a big meal, like their breakfast, lunch, dinner. And I've also heard about people using like coconut oil and different fats to help uh, the digestion process, and they've had a lot of like benefits with that. Um, the only other like major like side effect that I've heard of from people who've been taking it is people who have medications that slow blood clotting. So I think they're like anticoagulants. And so they can interact with berberine. So um, berberine actually might slow blood clotting as well. So when you take it with those medications that also slow blood clotting, it might increase like the risk of like bruising or bleeding. Um, but that's something that people can talk with their doctors about, and it doesn't really interact with that many drugs. It's like really very few. It's just really interesting when you look into the data online because there is a lot of like, like good and bad with Berberine. There's a lot of hate on it. And it's very interesting to see because I'm like, is this, like big business, like not for Berberine, or is this like really like scientific? But most of the like studies are very promising, and I haven't had that many people with side effects. Mostly it's just the stomach one. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I have seen the same data that with Coumadin or warfarin, the anticoagulants, that you should really be careful because berberine can interfere with those medications. That's the only thing that I really saw. And I think there were a couple of other antibiotics that were that it might negate the effects of, but other than that, like people always ask me, like, can I take this with metformin, or can I take this with my insulin? Can I take this with my other medications? And I always say, have a conversation with your practitioner. There aren't contraindications that I know of other than the medications that we already talked about, but you always want, whenever you're adding any sort of supplement, you always want to have a conversation with your doctor, whether or not they're going to be knowledgeable about berberine. That's another story. Probably they won't be. I don't want to assume, but unless they're more of a holistic integrative doctor, then probably they're going to be all for it. But in the conventional system, they may not know a whole lot about supplements. And I mean, to their credit, I mean, there's so many supplements, and the supplement industry is not well regulated. And it's nearly impossible to stay up on all of them and any contraindications. But I do know, definitely stay away from them if you're on any anticoagulants. And I think if you're pregnant, that's another contraindication. Is that correct?
Yeah, I didn't mention that. Yeah, I think you have to be careful with a lot of things when you're pregnant, with
Yeah.
supplements in general. I feel like I wouldn't even really recommend too many. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's just the time to just not put anything into your body that you don't absolutely need, and just, let that baby develop like it's supposed to. But yeah, so that's what I've kind of seen with the contraindications, any side effects. We talked about the benefits. What about dosage? Would you recommend, so we'll talk a little bit about fasting in a few minutes, and how to use it with that. But is there dosage recommendations different for different disease states? In particular, the ones of blood sugar dysregulation. So, I work with a lot of people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, blood pressure issues. Is the dosaging any different for any of those, or do you pretty much recommend the same dosaging across the board?
Yeah, I would say like the same. I mean, every person is individually like completely different. So you mentioned, like not to take as much at first and kind of like see where you're at with it and like slowly add higher doses. And that's very important with berberine. Um, Most of like the studies that we read that show the benefits, the scientific studies, they use about 1500 milligrams per day. So that's like the standard dose. And that would be like in most supplements, like 2 to 3 capsules. Um, and that's like what they consider like the minimum effective dose. But it is interesting because, like you mentioned, a lot of people do take it with metformin or with insulin, and you don't really want to like switch drugs like cold turkey. And so, what a lot of people will do is like slowly introduce it into their routine with their medications. And maybe they're taking half as much insulin as they used to, or they're taking half of a dose of metformin, and they're integrating the berberine. And the goal for a lot of people would ultimately to get off their insulin or maybe their metformin. And so I think it's really important to kind of like start with a minimum effective dose. Maybe start with like 1 capsule and then go to 2 capsules. Uh, and test your ketones, like your blood glucose, kind of like see how that goes, because usually like the less you need, the better. But yeah, for most people though, you take about 1,400 milligrams a day, which would be 2 capsules a
Okay.
day.
Yeah. And so I know most people are listening to this on the podcast. Oh, there we go. But I have your Ancient Bliss Berberine here that you sent me, and I thank you for that. And yours is, let's see, 1,200 milligrams per 2 capsules. And so when I'm working with my students, I'm typically suggesting 1,200 to 1,500 milligrams daily as a therapeutic dosage. But like you said, you can start slow and go from there. Um, and see how you're tolerating it. But yeah, most people do well right around that 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams, somewhere in there. And as far as intermittent fasting goes, are there I've heard people taking it at different times, and I don't think there's a right or wrong here, but do you suggest those who are intermittent fasting, which is the majority of people who listen to this podcast, and even doing some longer fasts, do you recommend them taking it, like I've heard, take it about an hour before your meal? I've heard of people taking it before bedtime when they have that overnight blood sugar kind of pushing up. Usually that is indicative of some liver issues and fatty liver disease. Those overnight blood sugars tend to be more problematic. But are there different strategies for intermittent fasters to use? Like I've heard some people take it right away in the morning before their fast and kind of helping it with the fasting period, or I've heard others taking it like an hour before eating. Like, do you have any sort of preference or recommendations for those who are fasting?
Yeah. So those are both like evening and morning are both great. I mean, berberine is like likened to a fasting accelerant. So a good question to ask would be like, when do you want to start your fast? So if your last meal is going to be like that evening meal, it would be like a good time to take the berberine after. Um, I kind of like to think of berberine as like activating a fast. So if you're going to start your fast in the morning, maybe your last meal is like your breakfast, however you're going to do that. Um, you could take it in the morning. People take it like the evenings and the mornings. It's kind of just based off of how you're planning your intermittent fasting. Um, and because it like helps with the process of autophagy and the activation of like the AMPK pathway, it is a good supplement to take like before a prolonged period. So uh, I would do it like not with meals if your main benefit is for fasting purposes. Um, I would do it after. And if you do have like that GI problem and you have like a sensitive stomach, or you are more prone to IBS issues like that, then I would take it with food for sure. Just to like,
Okay, what about extended fast? If somebody was doing like a 36 to 42 hour fast, they're not eating that day, or even a 48-hour fast, do you still recommend that they take it during that prolonged fast, or is it more so just after meals um and then maybe before dinner if they're not eating that day?
yeah, you could definitely take it with a prolonged fast. I actually prefer to take it with my fast when I do longer fasts because I'm still pretty new to fasting, but I find that it really helps because it does reduce those sugar cravings and those cravings for food. Um, and it does like help activate those pathways in your body that do create autophagy. So the only thing is, if you are like planning to exercise, with like a light exercise, it should be fine. But if you are doing a heavy exercise, because you are trying to like increase glucose levels, I wouldn't take it before exercising. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And in your berberine supplement, you've also added, well, first let's talk about, before we talk about that, like how you started your supplement company and what that process was like, because as we said before, the supplement industry is not regulated by the FDA. It can be a really crazy place to try to navigate. And I always tell my students, like I am part of Full Script, which is like practitioner-based database of supplements. Like, please don't just go and order off of Amazon. Like, it's really tough to know which supplements are following the GMP, which is the good manufacturing processes. And it's just, it can be a crazy world. And you don't want to be putting something in your body that is not what it says on the label or is going to make you more ill. You definitely want to get some good supplements that are well studied, and you have in that capsule what is said on the label. So yeah, tell us how you started that whole process, and you know, how people can know that they're getting a good solid supplement from you.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a journey. And part of what like got me into that journey was I'm like a huge fan of herbal supplements myself. And just trying to find like supplements without additives or fillers is like it's like a journey, like it's a challenge. Um, like you said, on Amazon, most of them do have fillers or additives. I mean, once you like learn about like the business, you realize like, oh, if you add fillers, then you can cut costs in so many different corners. So it makes sense why people do it. It's just like very unfortunate because a lot of people don't have like that knowledge. And with marketing, you know, you can say like so many things that literally mean nothing. Um, and so that part's very interesting. Something too important with like the fillers and additives is a lot of them do block absorption in the body and can also like wreak havoc on the gut biome. So things like magnesium like stearate and like silica and like titanium dioxide, guar gums, like vegetable oils, sunflower oil, like all these unnecessary ingredients are actually like a lot more common than you would think. And so that's like kind of like my big uh one of my big like priorities with my brand was I just wanted to like have an herbal capsule that people could like fully trust. Like there's like nothing. It's just an organic vegetable capsule because you need something to put, you know, the herb in. And there's no fillers, there's no weird ingredients you have to like sort through and try to understand. So that was really important to me. And now I feel comfortable like taking my own products. It's just like a win-win. Um, as far as like being like GMP certified and FDA like approved and all of those things, FDA approval in the US really does not like mean too much, honestly. So it's not the hardest thing to go through. And they really just want to make sure you're not adding, you know, the chemicals that they deem like bad. But as we know, like there are a lot of really bad ingredients that the FDA is okay with. So it's like
Yes.
it's not really meant to
I
be.
mean, there's a zillion that have been banned in so many other countries that are allowed here for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, FDA approved is obviously important, but what you really want to look for in a supplement company is that it's GMP certified. It's um basically that's just like good manufacturing processes that are used. You want to make sure the people you're taking herbs from like aren't just making them in their house. Like they should be third party tested, uh, like tested for heavy metals, tested for, you know, like any sort of like contaminants or like rocks, anything that could get into the product. So with that, like it's just important. We do our manufacturing in the state of Georgia. Um, but they have, you know, all those like fancy machines, everything that can track like every little detail, like insane testing. So it's really important with that. Um, and then obviously you want to make sure that your supplement is made in the United States. So a huge like trend right now, which is really disturbing, but a lot of like supplements are being made in like China and like different countries and they're being sold on Amazon. And sometimes they're even like mimicking another brand. Like it's pretty crazy how that's happening right now. And you just really want to make sure that it's made in the US because they definitely don't have the same like quality control standards there as here. And then obviously like anything that's not made here, it's just like taking longer to get to you. It's just less potent. It's so many different things can like happen with that. So yeah.
Yeah. And going off of the potency, like the bottle that your berberine comes in is dark. Is it sensitive to light? And how long does the potency typically last for berberine?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely like good to keep it in like a cool air conditioned, like darker environment. Light isn't gonna disturb it. I like am really bad about keeping my supplement bottles like just in my car and it's really hot in Texas. So
Yeah.
um it's not like optimal, but it's not gonna like, destroy it or anything. And they last for about like 3 years. So our expiration date is 3 years out. And that's pretty common with most berberine supplements. So
Okay. Where's your berberine actually sourced from? I know a lot of it, like you mentioned, is Asia. I think there is some in the North American area as well, but where do you source yours from?
we source ours from Asia. Yeah. That's like most berberine is there. And so like we source it from like the barberry, which is like its active form. So
Yeah. Okay. And then in your berberine supplement, as I mentioned, it's 2 caps is 1,200 milligrams. You've added cinnamon, bitter melon, and green tea. Tell the listeners why you decided to add those in with your berberine.
yeah, so with berberine, we wanted to add in the Ceylon cinnamon. So that is really good for like blood sugar regulation. It's also great for like the metabolism and it works synergistically with the berberine. Um, Also, we added bitter melon. That is also really good for blood sugar and sugar cravings. There's something about the bitterness in that herb that causes you to not crave sugar, which is really cool. And we wanted to throw those in because it's really hard to drink bitter melon tea. I don't know if you tried it, it's disgusting. But it's a very powerful herb, and so we wanted to include it. And then ECG, that's the active part of the green tea extract that we include. It's not actually like caffeinated, it's more like um, an activator. So it helps the cells like widen and absorb the like berberine going in. So it kind of just helps with like absorption and potency. And so that's why we added all those herbs. Yeah.
Okay. And I have seen combination berberine and cinnamon before, but I've never seen the bitter melon in there, and nor have I tried it. So, and I know for during my morning fast, I drink cinnamon tea almost every day. And a lot of people are, get all up in arms about that sometimes. Well, isn't the cinnamon going to break your fast? Isn't that flavored? I'm like, for me, no. And actually, cinnamon's been found to help decrease appetite. It's an appetite, not stimulant, but opposite. I'm losing the word on it, but it does
Suppressant?
help. Yes. Did I say depressant?
No,
No.
suppressant. Is that right?
Depressant, thank you. I'm like, I know the depressant is not the word I'm looking for. Sometimes you just have a brain fart during, and it doesn't work well with podcasting. It's like, oh God, you got to think of that word right now. But yes, appetite suppressant. So I drink cinnamon tea every single day. And I love cinnamon. I love the flavors. Not everybody does, but that's interesting that it's included in there. And yeah, the bitter melon, I would imagine, is really bitter for the teas. So, but that's a neat helpful combination to have in the berberine. So yeah, I bet it would help, people with their fasting, especially when they're first starting out and maybe their insulin levels are pretty high, and that's why they're not losing weight. They're having a lot of cravings. They're not able to go more than a few hours in between meals without eating because their insulin levels are high. So it can definitely be beneficial. So yeah, that's very interesting about the whole supplement industry and process. And I was very happy to see that you had the GMP label on your supplement. Super interesting that, they're manufactured right in the United States. Well, not super interesting, but interesting that at such a young age, you've got your, company making supplements. And I'm glad that you mentioned that we should watch that they are sourced from the United States, because even a lot of the over-counter medications that are off label are made overseas, and it can be scary what's getting in the body. And I know I've heard of other supplement brands who are like you, like they want top-notch herbs, they want them with no fillers, and they want them to be tested. And I know they went and did their own testing, thinking that whatever they were sent was pure, and there was like rat feces in there was rocks in there, and things you definitely don't want to be putting in your body. So that is very helpful that you explained all of that. What else? Okay, we talked about dosage and the benefits and anything to watch out for. Do you know much about berberine for liver health and how it works on the liver for those folks who are struggling with non-alcoholic fatty liver? A lot of it's just going back to that insulin resistance, and insulin is pushing the fatty liver. It's happening in the liver and in the muscle cells. PCOS, that insulin resistance, is happening more in the ovary. The insulin resistance for type 2 diabetes is just overall blood sugar dysregulation in the pancreas pushing out too much insulin. But anything that the berberine, do you know of, that actually acts on the liver and helps with fatty liver disease?
So I'm not like the most familiar with how it works on the liver. I do know though that I have had like quite a few people who do take it for that. And they've worked with their like doctors before, kind of like on the dosing and stuff like that. I think it's something to do with like modifying lipid metabolism or something in the liver like that. Uh, I can't really go into like in-depth detail, but I do know that it is used for that. I just kind of like, it's not my area, so I kind of stay away from the liver in general. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I know that you would think if it's helping with insulin resistance overall, it would be helping with the fatty liver as well. Last question, because I did have, like, I run courses and I have students that I work with live. And in my last course, somebody asked me about sea moss and if it was good to take with fasting and, blood sugar regulation. And I'm like, I don't really know the data on that. Honestly, I would have to do some research. And I saw that that's another supplement that you offer through Ancient Bliss. And we'll link all of this in the show notes so you can find where to get Macy supplements from. But can you talk to us a little bit about sea moss and what the benefits of that are while we have you here on the podcast?
Yeah, definitely. So sea moss is actually probably one of my favorite herbs. I take sea moss and berberine personally. Um, but sea moss is really cool because it gives you 92 out of the 102 essential minerals that your body needs to function optimally. So our supplement, sea moss and bladderwrack. Bladderwrack is another herb in the sea, and it gives you the other 10 minerals that your body needs. So when you take the two together, you're getting all 102 minerals that your body needs. So it's kind of like one of those things where you're like, we're almost like meant to take this. Um, and so like a lot of people are mineral deficient, and this is just because our soil is more depleted than it used to be. Our water quality is like gone down. We have like plastic bottles everywhere. Just everything with that's changing in the world. And so mineral deficiencies actually can cause a lot of different like diseases or ailments in the body. It kind of all like stems from a mineral deficiency in some way. So like maybe like bone health, thyroid issues, energy levels, like gut problems, like weight gaining, stuff like that. So that is where sea moss is really beneficial. Um, you asked about it with like, did you say insulin resistance or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I haven't really, I guess, like I haven't really like had anyone take it for that specifically, but I do know it's very popular with people with like hormone imbalances. And so I guess those two kind of go pretty hand in hand. Um, and so I would say like most people who take it are taking it to like get their hormones back on level, people who are either like trying to conceive or people who are postpartum and dealing with like hormone imbalances, or people even who have like heat flashes and are going through like menopause. It's very common with like anything to do with like the like ovaries, or like healing like the like hormonal body for a female. So um that, and then also like thyroid health. So a lot of people who get like Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, and they don't have like adequate levels, they take CMOS because it's really high in like a good form of iodine that the body needs for like a
Okay.
healthy thyroid.
That was my next question. I would imagine it, with it being CMOS, that it would be high in iodine, but I do have some people who, you know, myself included, I am a big advocate of Redmond's real salt and Celtic salt and sea salt. It's natural, that isn't supplemented with iodine. And I get that question a lot, like, whoa, am I getting enough iodine? So there's another good source is CMOS. And sometimes I'll see like seaweed, like dry seaweed in the grocery store, and I'm like, oh, I just can't do it. I don't know if that's the same thing, or if a lot, you know, if those would have similar nutritional advantages, but I know for me, instead of eating seaweed, I would rather take a supplement.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty by itself.
Yeah. So I think that was all the questions that I had for you. Is there anything else that we're thinking about berberine? I think we hit everything I was wanting to ask about. Am I forgetting anything that you would like to add?
Um, no, I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Well, tell us where we can find your supplements, and where's the best place for us to get them from?
Yeah, so we sell on our website, which is ancientbliss.com. And then we also are on Amazon, and we are going to be in Walmart soon. Should be there soon. And yeah, I guess our best bet would be to get us on the website, ancientbliss.com. We do free shipping, and you're likely to get it fastest there. So
Okay. I know mine came really fast when I shipped. So the free shipping is, there's no like minimum that you need to purchase or anything?
yeah, no, we just do free shipping.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we will definitely send you some some clients to try the berberine. And again, if you do want to try berberine, if you've never tried it before, if you're on medication, on other medications, or you're working with a professional, definitely ask them, have a conversation with them, especially if you're on any diabetes medications or insulin prior to starting them. But we thank you for coming on the show today and talking to us all about berberine.
Yeah, thank you for having me.